Where do we start? We need to have some cafecito and some panecito. Because it's about to get interesting. It's a whole telenovela.
My name is Amanda Ine, and I am a parent and resident here in Northside of Northside Student. He's a junior. I'm also currently serving as the PTA president of Northside and very involved advocate for our community here in Northside.
Hello, my name is Valerie Valdez. I'm a parent of 3 students, a senior, junior, and a 6th grader. We all live here in Northside. Our roots are growing.
The concerns we're bringing forth is about the new coaching staff that has been placed at Northside High School.
Yes.
Our boys have really and truly, to put it to words, been victims of mental and verbal abuse, as well as their IEPs have not been followed or respected. This particular head coach has come in when he initially came for 2 weeks straight, telling our boys don't be bitches and hoes every morning while they're doing their workouts. And then I addressed that. And then soon after that, one of their brothers, because that's how they refer to each other on the team, who also has an IEP, was yelled at and asked if he was retarded in front of the whole team, and soon after quit. Other concerns, my son has led the prayer and the scripture ever since 8th grade for every game day. And this year was to be no different. It is a student-led prayer, which by law he's able to do. So he printed out the prayer and passed it out to his fellow players. They began to pray. And the very next game, the coach told him that his 2-minute prayer was too long and half the players cannot read anyway, which was incredibly heartbreaking because a lot of my son's strength is based on his faith. And a lot of the community here in Northside, I know they feel the same way because a lot of our strength is rooted in our faith and our camaraderie as a community. In addition to those things, my son has overheard his quarterback coach call him a dipshit on a headset, which is absolutely crushing to him because my son really wants to be a great quarterback, and all the 2 head coaches before this one can attest to that. And so needless to say, and this is now transferred on to the players as well, because they are making very negative comments too. The coach also placed blame on the losses on my son. He said that if we lose, the loss is all on the quarterback. So then that turned to the players then saying that to him as well. Whereas in previous years, the players would uplift my son as the leader of the team.
One of the state would be Holy Taylor, Holy Taylor.
They would chant that on the sideline, like that was their endearment to him. Now we've gone from, you know, that camaraderie and being there for each other and chanting for each other to a silent, empty sideline. Now we had 50 varsity players last year. We're down to 17. 15 of them are seniors. 9 of the boys that have played together since their 8th grade year have quit. They are juniors. So we are very concerned that this toxic environment is now going to eventually cause us to not have that football opportunity for our boys.
My senior, he also has a learning disability. And the fact that I was told that he was not able to play because of the fact that he wasn't learning the plays correctly. And let me start off. So the whole point is these coaches came in, decided to change everything at the beginning. And we were okay with that. We were like, okay, change is good. Now, my thing was with Mr. JJ, I was like, okay, I want to make sure my son has a chance because these changes, not all of our boys are going to adapt to right away. So the problem is that I have to worry about my own son because I know how he learns and what his interests are. I needed to make sure, is he going to have a chance? And he promised us in front of everybody at that meeting that every student was going to get a fair chance, and that's not what happened.
Under the other prior 2 coaches, our signs were able to have armbands that have the plays, so that not because our sons don't know them, just helps them call an accurate play to the team. And I advocated for my son to have that, who also has an IEP, who has visual aids and graphic organizers on his IEP, which that would be qualified as one. And I was told that he was not going to baby and coddle my son to give him an armband. And he also said that he wouldn't be able to have it in college and NFL anyway. And so, and ironically enough, you know, my son and I just attended a TCU game 3 weeks ago, and Josh Hoover, the star quarterback of TCU, guess what he had? An armband. And if you look on Sundays, Mahomes, what does he have? An armband.
Yes.
So that really caused both of our sons to not have a level playing field. And so not only did I ask, but my son also asked, to which this coach started talking very negatively about the other 2 coaches prior to him and calling their methods stupid and really downplaying coaches that had invested time in them since the 8th grade. And so that was horrifying to him, obviously, because he looked up to them as a father figure. When a parent or a student who has a learning disability, who has an IEP, and that was listed as an accommodation, it is clear that an armband is a visual aid and a graphic organizer. That is against state and federal law. You cannot deny them their right.
Yes, and we just also learned from a recent ARD meeting that there's other accommodations, not just the wristband, but there's a lot of other accommodations that they were allowed to have that these coaches didn't give them. They didn't give them a fair trial, basically, I want to say.
Yeah.
Whenever that had happened, my son basically was like, I'm upset because they didn't want to play me. And so I had called one of the coaches and I was like, I want to know exactly what your policy is or how you conduct for the players to play. And he basically said that he needed to be part of huddle and he had to know the plays exactly. The attendance, of course, the attendance had to be no more than 2 days that they had to be absent or else they were going to miss the game. And so I told him, okay, that I understand that. And he did also say another player, which is his younger brother, he did state that his younger brother, which doesn't have the learning disability, he has a different IEP. So he had said, well, his younger brother knows the plays. His younger brother doesn't have to be, watching the plays, but he knows them. He could go out there and do them if we tell him to do it, basically. And so, that was a trigger warning for me because I'm like, okay, so you're comparing my older son with my younger son, one that has a learning disability, but the other one doesn't. So, and I asked him, I said, okay, so you're trying to say, knowing that my son has a learning disability, and at that point he had messed up and stated Miss Anae's son and another young man, which I'm not going to say his name because personal reasons, and another young boy, they were pulled separately because they couldn't understand the plays and they needed to be taught one-on-one, basically, with the coaches.
We had major concerns about that because
once that was said, yes.
Yeah, so back, history on me, I've been teaching 19 plus years, and we know as educators first, right, both educator and coach, we should not be telling confidential information about other students' learning abilities to other parents.
Not only that, but during the ARD meetings, that's the first thing they say.
Yes.
And these coaches are in these ARD meetings,
yes,
by the way.
Yes. And so really what kind of
it's insane.
Was the last straw, if you will, for us, hellaciousness that we've lived out for this past 9 months or longer than that now, 10, 11 months since March of this year, is Valerie and I have been very vocal about our concerns because the other boys that have quit in addition to our sons are like our sons. And 9+ of them, like I said, have silently quit based on this mental and verbal abuse that they've endured. So we've been the most vocal throughout this whole time. Well, on the last practice that our sons attended, Coach Resendez pitted our sons against each other in a play.
And not a normal play, no, because all of our sons called us immediately and let us know.
Yes.
This is not normal.
We later learned from our sons that he actually called Valerie's son over to him, told him to be violent with my son, to throw him to the ground, to rip his jersey, to do these things.
Grab him by the helmet, pull him
grab
down.
him by the helmet, fling him down.
Yes. Like,
And so just history, my son is normally a quarterback, and in this role, he is playing receiver.
my son played receiver since
Yeah.
I could remember.
Yeah, but he was actually playing corner.
Yes, he
so
got switched to corner.
so he pitted them against each other, and they got frustrated and kept kind of being engaged in the play after the whistle. And the most concerning thing is after that, I went to the afternoon practice, and Coach Resendez approached me, and he said, I expressed my concerns about what my son had shared. I told him, that I didn't like the fact that my son was still engaged in a play like that after, because that's not his character to do that. And also as he had threw his helmet down, and I know that seems small, but that's not something that my son does, no matter
normal.
the adversity he faces. And so that's when he informed me that football was a violent sport. And I told him, no, football has aggression that needs to happen in certain plays, but it should not be considered a violent sport or taught that way. And so then I left the practice. And then from there, Coach Resendez called Valerie, and I'll let her speak to this, but basically asked her to falsify a report on my son that he had put his hands on her son after the play.
So Resendez was returning a phone call from when my older son got home from lunch. He gets out early because he's a senior. So he came home. He's like, hey, there was an altercation at practice. It was normal that coach put Miguel up front with Taylor. So he was like, that was just like way out of the blue. And I asked him, I said, how was Taylor and how was Miguel? Because at that point I cared about both of the boys. It wasn't just how's my son doing and not my other son. And so he was like, they were fine. I know Taylor was a little bit more upset because of the situation at hand. And he was like, but Miguel was fine. He was actually laughing and smiling and, his normal self. Oh, and I told him, I said, okay, I'll speak to Amanda about it. And Miguel called at lunch. And he's like, oh, everything was fine. We were doing the plays. Coach told me basically rough him up, take him down, get him ready. I need you to do full force on him. Basically, the day of the game, Miguel had got this one player from another team and basically did damage to that player. And that player flew. And the coach specifically told my son, do that to Taylor. I need you to get him in the game, and I need him to, what was the exact word? He said, I need him to be ready, to be able to tackle because he's not knowing how to tackle. I told him, I said, that's fine. So I said, is that all he said? And he said, yes, Mom. And he was like, I did what I needed to do because I was trying to teach Taylor and he got upset and the whistle blew. He's like, I stopped. Taylor was still upset. And so he's like, Mr. Resendez grabbed us both and took us to his office. And at that point, I was like, okay. He calmed the situation down, which my son wasn't upset, obviously, because that's his brother. So he didn't see nothing wrong at the moment, which was another warning for me as a parent, because I'm like, that was very wrong. And for you to think that it was just a regular play is not good. So Resendez calls and he's explaining and he's saying basically, so there was an incident with my senior and he was like, well, you could go ahead and write a concern email about Lewis and the other player that they collided. And I said no, because it wasn't a problem. It was both of them going for the ball and they both hit each other to get the ball. And he said, well, you're at it. You might as well add on the physical force that was done to Miguel today at practice, too. As a concerned parent, it's all in your rights, he said. And I told him, I said, so is that what this is about at that point? I was like, is this what you're trying to do? I was like, because to me, right away, I felt when my sons both had spoken to me, and we had spoken, I said, no, this was a setup. He was trying to set my son up. And prior to that, I had to home visit with a coach because my son decided to get aggressive and try to take down his father by tackling him. And I had to call Coach Resendez because my son had told me it's in my head to take people down and to be aggressive at 5 in the morning. So best believe I had that coach's number dialing every hour until he showed up and gave me an explanation. Our meeting with Dela Cruz, once we met with Dela Cruz,
The principal.
yes, Mr. Dela Cruz, our principal at Northside. We're sitting in our meeting talking about all this mess going on and a plan for my son, Luis Valdez, the senior. And so I told him, I said, okay, Dela Cruz had said, okay, we're done with Luis. Let's speak about Miguel. And so I told him, I said, okay, that's fine. I said, and our principal had said, so I'm aware that you made a phone call to Coach. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I did. And I said, what's the funny thing is that whenever my son tells me it's in my head that I need to, be aggressive and take people down when I'm trying to protect myself, isn't normal. That's not normal behavior. I said, because anybody in their right mind will not sit there and try and tackle their father. And so I said that behavior is not my child. And so I got very concerned and I told him, I'm here because I need you to fix this. And I said, and I looked at the coach and I said, and I asked you to be in my meeting because I want you to be able to defend yourself and I want to see what type of answer you have. So let me explain to you his answer. He sat there and said my son was showing signs of schizophrenia. And was sitting there, and I turned and I'm looking at him. I'm like right here, and he's right there. And I look at him, and I'm like, okay, can you explain yourself? Because I don't know what you have thinking in that head of yours right now. And our principal's sitting across, and I'm like, did you just hear what he said? And he's basically like, oh yeah, I want to hear. Like if it's funny. And so I'm like, yeah, I want to hear. So go ahead and explain. And so he sits there, and he's like, yeah. So you'll have the player, which is going to be the one that's going to be aggressive on the field, that's going to make the plays, that's going to make the tackles and stuff. And then that's going to be he didn't have to respect his coaches. And then he said the second person that he's going to be showing is the student. And I said, oh, the student. Okay, so explain to me about the student. Because I'm curious at this point to see what this man has to say. So he said, so the student's going to be, the student has to respect the teachers, his classmates, his coaches. And then the third person is going to be your son being at home, following directions. And I'm over here looking at our principal like, you're sitting here listening to what he's saying at this point and nothing's being said. Nobody's being called. And so I'm like, okay, I'm done with our meeting at that point. And I looked at Dela Cruz and I said, okay, I'm going to need help. Besides this, I'm going to need help. And so I said, I'm not leaving the seat until you find someone to help me right now. Because this meeting is a joke. And I said, this isn't the answers I needed. And so he called the intervention specialist and emailed her right then and there. And as I was leaving the office, she was already on the phone with me. I spoke to her and I told her the situation. And her reaction was priceless because she could not believe what I had just told her, what happened in the meeting. And so she was like, okay, well, first thing of all, we're going to get your son help because he needs help. He has anger issues and he needs to speak out. And then I'm going to ask you to take them to one of our resource centers so we could get that documented. And so like that, whenever you go to speak about it, so they can investigate it further, you'll have the proper documents. And then she said, then you'll send a confirmation email to cover the fact that he said this in your meeting and the principal was there, because she was like, normally I would call the principal and ask him what does he want to do. But apparently he doesn't know what he's doing or what he was sitting across from. And so I had told her, I said, okay, we'll do that. So we did all them steps, sent the email saying basically that he was not being diagnosed with schizophrenia, no signs of schizophrenia at all, and went from there. And so I sent the email directly to De La Cruz, and his response basically was that, thank you for taking the proper steps and advocating very strongly for your son. And I see that this is a very important matter to you because you're taking the proper steps by the book to make sure your son gets the proper treatment that he needs. And so now one time did he sit there. Oh, and also he also said that he was going to talk to the staff and let them know what was going on. And so he was going to make sure that Miguel felt safe, and my other son, Luis, where they could go ahead and go back to...
When he was approached to falsify the report on Isaiah, my son, we no longer felt like we could send our boys to a practice in which a coach may call another parent to falsify a report on them.
Yeah, and my son personally, Miguel, said that he did not feel safe.
Yeah.
Because knowing what he had put Miguel to do,
yeah,
and knowing the fact that he was already having those anger emotions coming out, and he was lashing out, he said, what if it wasn't Taylor? What if it was another boy? And he did something to me and I did something physical, I would have ended up in jail. They're trying to set them up, basically.
Yeah. And so due to this toxic environment, we had to make the heart-wrenching choice together. We actually went to the principal's office together with all the kids. With all the kids and the head athletic director of the district.
Yes.
And we had to make a very soul-crushing, in a sense, choice to take our sons out of football, even though we had devoted all of this time. And mind you, 6 to 7 other of their brothers had already quit. And so we made, again, and we have both cried and because all the coaches prior to him believed in our sons, and they told us that they had a future in college with this play time. But not only that, just the violations of laws for their learning to make the playing field even. The violation of laws not protecting them to be able to pray and to instill faith in the team by student-led. And it's been hard for us to come now Friday night since we made that decision and know that our boys wouldn't take the field anymore. And it was Isaiah's junior year. He started head quarterback, and it's just crushing. And now to know that the district has done an investigation and come back with him coming back to the campus after being 3 weeks straight, after setting forth this horrible, toxic environment that these boys are in, and now they have to see him on campus again. Not to mention how the coaches and the other players that were doing the bullying wore T-shirts to school saying "Free JJ" on the back, basically gaslighting all of these boys that had had a horrible experience. I mean, it doesn't stop there. Even just this last game against Trimble Tech, we had one of our coaches posting, now that our head coach is back, you can be mad, the district has spoken. We're going to go out and get this win. Basically digging at the parents and the players that have tried to advocate for themselves.
I wanted to add about my senior because this has really affected him more than my other son. He goes through life, he doesn't learn things very easily. And that's very difficult for him because he struggles with that on a daily basis. And it takes a certain a person to be able to handle a student like him, or athlete, or worker at that. Like Amanda was sharing, all these years we haven't had any problems with any of the coaches. As a matter of fact, Luis has been working since he was 15. He's 18 now, and he's not the type of person that just works 30 days. He's held the job up to 8 months, and basically, for this man to come into his life, these coaches, I should say, because it's not just a one-man show, it's many. And to come into his life and destroy him. He completely destroyed my son. they've crushed his dreams. They have changed his life completely around, and his soul's like into pieces right now. And I say that like from the heart, because I'm his mother and I've never seen my son like this.
We had a very good interim coach last year who interviewed for the job, along with 3 other coaches from our coaching staff from last year that interviewed for this job as head coach. And we did great. I mean, as far as that goes, we had a 4-6 season as a varsity team. We won 5 of our JV games as well. And now this year we've went 1-9.
Yeah.
And the JV had scored 0 points all season long until this last game with Trimble Tech. They scored 6 points.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up because what happened is when, and I know how this man got appointed to his job. It was from the outgoing principal of Northside High School and I don't know if we would call her a current board member from District 1, forced that man into this role. And so when he came in, even though some of our other coaches wanted to stay, maybe not as head coach, but as assistant coaches, he let them all go and told them that they would not be coaching football at Northside, and brought in all new people with the exception of 1. So I want to make that very clear, which also told our boys something, right? That, just because you apply to be something, it doesn't mean that you need to be exterminated. That would be like, okay, Isaiah plays quarterback, right? Well, a lot of people may want to play quarterback, but there's only 1 quarterback. So what does that mean? The rest of the team, understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a good lesson for our boys. So I want to make that very clear. That again, we had very positive experiences with before, but these are the experiences that we have now endured.
Yeah, they went from basically inspirational words. I call it words of wisdom from Coach Connolly, because that's what he did. He fed our sons. He fed them words of wisdom every day. There was not one day that he missed in putting words to inspire these boys, whether they won or lose, and they go from that to this, And yeah, we're going to be raw as it can be, because that's how he was with our sons. Yeah. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to be hiding behind the bush. We're going to give it to you raw as can be, because that's exactly what they had to endure. And it's beyond words can explain, because when it's your own child that you're having to, go through this, and then there's other players that are going through this, and they're just looking at you like, we need help. What are we going to do? Like, my parents cannot be there. They can't speak for me. And that breaks my heart, because they see what our sons go through. He commented on just one thing that you had to say right now. Excuses is what he gives. He comments about excuses. That's all we get is excuses from him. He doesn't face up to what he is. He's a coward in my books, because instead of saying, okay, let me direct this question that you guys have come up forward to me with, he hides. And that's a coward to me, because instead of saying, okay, let's talk about it and find a solution, he doesn't do that.
I really respectfully must say that I think this is not the time or the place. Those things have been brought up before. Some of the things that were said, some of the things that were allegedly said.
It is the time and the place, and you're attacking our kids.
And so, us being a Northside community, we're Hispanics and African Americans, and we're very strong-minded, and we expect answers. We expect our answers.
And we expect accountability.
Yes, very much.
Because I know, as an educator of 19 years, if I was to go into my class on Monday and tell my students, don't be bitches and hoes, and are you retarded, I would be at McDonald's asking if they needed ketchup on their hamburger.
And not only that, but how are you going to try and diagnose a student? And then I didn't add, is that I turned and I looked at him and I said, is that normal to you? And he said, yes. I had other students that I coached at other schools, as a matter of fact, that showed the same signs, and their parents agreed with what I had to say. And I told him, I said, well, I'm sorry, but like I've told you, those other communities isn't Northside community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I said, they don't call us Northside community for nothing. Because when we plant our roots here, we're here to stay, and our families are here to stay. So
yeah, so it's just very important as parents and educators that we be on the lookout to make sure students are having a wholesome environment to learn, to grow, to be successful, that they are receiving their accommodations that are law by state and federal, that they are receiving their right to pray should they want to pray and lead prayer, and not be intimidated by coaches who use bullying language and encourage other players to use bullying language. That's just not acceptable in any setting, but certainly not here in Northside.
With all this leading up, we had an emergency ARD meeting, which is not normal at this time for my senior. We normally have them at the end of the year. So they requested an ARD meeting with all his teachers. So 2 of the coaches showed up in the meeting, which got my son very uncomfortable. And you could see in his body language, and his teachers noticed that right away, which I didn't know that they'd seen that till yesterday. So let me get to, so we're in the ARD meeting talking about Luis, and all the teachers had some good things to say about my son. You know, they're excited for him graduating this year, so I'm proud of him. That's a big honor to me as a mother, because he's always had beyond perfect attendance. He's always gotten that, and he's never failed. He's always passed every school year with his disabilities, and was able to maintain a 3.2 GPA. So his teachers are commenting about all of that stuff, how he's held a job, how he's be able to juggle school, work, and being an athlete, all 3 at one time since he was 15. He is a hard worker. He's always been a go-getter, and he's always had his future focused. Getting a scholarship from football, being drafted to the NFL, you know, that was his dream since I could remember, since 7th grade. He has used football as a therapy, because we had lost his aunt, and she was very close to him. She was like his second mother. She was there when he was born for all 3 of my sons, and we lost her. And 5 months later, we had lost my father. So we had to bury 2 very close people to his life 5 months apart. So he used, and I have told Taylor many times when he's felt like he wanted to give up, he has used God and football to cover that pain, and to get through the pain, and to be able to still strive and be able to pass and keep going on with life. He has used that, and I've noticed that, and I've shared that with him yesterday, and it broke him down. And he didn't know that I noticed that. So while these teachers are saying nothing but good stuff about my son, one of the coaches had nothing but bad stuff to say about him. And it really, really got to him, because he kept telling Luis he doesn't focus in his class. He said, I had to approach Luis many times and tell him, you're not doing the assignment. And Luis just says, okay, I'm going to do it. And then he says, okay, I'm going to call your mom. And he just laughs at the coach. And that's not my son's behavior. He's very well respected. I'm looking at my son, you know, in this meeting, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so I make it very well known that I notice that he doesn't like this coach. And so I'm like, okay. I make it very well clear that I understand when my son doesn't agree with something that someone has to say. And normally he doesn't get like this. And so we leave the meeting, we go home, and that evening he didn't eat. He just went to sleep. And his dad was like, I'll give you a pill because maybe your head's just hurting, and he slept the whole day. And so I told my husband, I said, I am worried because this meeting did not go right. I said, there was something there. There's something wrong. And so I actually had him sleep in the living room because I was like, you're going to sleep in the living room tonight. And he stayed there. We're the next day after our meeting. And so I'm on the phone with De La Cruz letting him know. I said, hey, this is brought to my attention that one of the coaches, Coach Jonice, had posted on Facebook that about their winning for that night, and apparently we didn't win. We didn't win the game, and so it was another lost game. And my son had Coach Jonice on social media, so he was able to be.
And it was the statement that he had made in that post. He made the statement in the post. You may be mad if you want to, but the district has spoken. We're just going to go out and get this win. So in other words, making a dig at us parents who have come with these concerns, and then also gaslighting the other players that have quit due to this. And this is in a Facebook post that he posted.
First of all, he took a picture from Coach Coons, something that was not negative.
At the beginning of the year.
It was positive, and he turned it into something evil. We're still standing tall and going to finish the season strong with our head coach back. We are not dwelling on the past because it's motion over here. Be mad if you want. The district has spoken. We're getting this win tonight. And so my son read this, okay? And it was his senior night. And we're very traditional. Head went to Dolores Huerta, to Alder, to Northside. And so at that point, my son had to miss his senior night. And it was already devastated as it was for him, beyond means. It's his senior year. It's his last year of being an actual child, in his words. And to see this really got to him. And there was another one because, like I said, we are a family at Northside. And I allow my son to be able to put family, coaches, friends, certain friends for a reason. And so one of the coaches' wife decided to post something, and she was also on his social media. And this was another thing that she put. In a season of setbacks and unknowns, taking shot after shot, this team put their hand in the dirt and kept working. Those that mattered stayed. The greedy and the resilient ones. It may not have been a winning season by numbers, but I couldn't be more proud of these players, coaches, and families who focused on what the game is really about. Growth, character, and the ability to overcome when things get tough. In the end, good always wins.
So what are we trying to say here? The players that devoted all their time since middle school that had to make the soul-crushing decision to leave this team mid-season because they were in a toxic, very toxic, non-accommodating, non-camaraderie team. So because of that, they don't matter? Those that mattered stayed? What does that mean? What about these 9+ other players? So they don't matter? Their voice don't matter? What does that mean to me?
Not only that, but this lady, we sat with her at many varsity games that we took our sons to. That we paid.
They were ball boy, yes, or Isaiah was backup varsity quarterback last year.
Exactly. Or just me. I just wanted my sons to feel the experience of being a varsity player. I wanted them to see, look, one day that's going to be you out there in that stadium, taking that field together with your brothers. That's what I wanted my boys to see. Like, just because you have the disabilities, it doesn't mean that that's where your life ends. No, you can fight for
Luis
that.
had even been offered a varsity position his
Yes,
sophomore year when
when
Isaiah and Miguel were freshmen.
Yes.
But he decided to stay back because Miguel and Isaiah were going to play JV.
And all the other boys.
And so he wanted to stay and play with his brothers. So he turned down that varsity role so that he could play on JV with Isaiah and Miguel.
That's why it's affecting him right now.
And now he wasn't given opportunity his senior year and given an even playing field with accommodations. I mean, you can imagine as parents how heartbreaking that truly is.
This was a tradition. Senior sunrise, senior night, go on that field with his brothers, and they weren't there. He was ripped from this coaches. And because of that,
definitely not right. I could kind of relate to that because I didn't get my opportunity in my senior year either. And I know how heartbreaking and how much it will take effect on the individual, on your son.
And he's an older brother to that boy over there.
I still think about it to this day, like I didn't get my senior year opportunity, so it goes way beyond high school on to your adult. So I mean, yeah, they definitely need to be held accountable.
And now we're equally worried about Miguel and Taylor, my son, because they will be seniors. And is this man still going to be allowed to be there, intimidating them and abusing them like that? That's not okay.
Not if we go up there all together. Not if we keep on.
No, and another thing is yesterday, with all this going on, he had posted videos on social media yesterday in a classroom. And he knows darn well there's no phones at work, no phones at school, on the field, at practice, at the games, right? He's not a person to break rules. So I was on social media and I noticed he posted a lot of videos. And I'm watching these videos and the things that it's saying. And so one of them stood out. One of them has played that he wanted to end it. That's what the words were. I recorded that. I sent it directly to Mr. Calderon.
That's the head athletic director of the district.
And Mr. Menchaca, the one that is Mr. Menchaca is in charge of this investigation right now. And I called Mr. De La Cruz. I said, my son's I'm afraid he's gonna hurt himself right now. He's in class. I emailed you the video. Please watch it. I'm sending my son to your office. My husband called me right away and said, tell my son to go to that principal's office now. And so by the time I got there, I wrapped up the baby, went straight over there, and I got there and I'm looking for my son. And before I said anything, because I had to go in there and I'm like, there has to be a strategy. I'm not going to just go in there and say, oh, you're trying to hurt yourself. No, I had to think smart. So I sent the email, leave a paper trail that I warned them and see what actions they are going to take, how they're going to handle this situation. Because I saw how my son got during the meeting. I said, if I saw it, I'm pretty sure they saw it. And so I rushed to the school, and he has the counselor, Ms. Valenzuela. He has two of his teachers. One of them was Ms. Baca, intervention specialist. And they also called in the suicidal people to help the situation because of the videos. And as he's walking in, Luis is laughing and smiling like if nothing was going on. And these videos that he posted, for them to bring in a suicidal person was a major thing. And so it was a bunch of us women who sat him down And he's smiling, and they're asking him, why are you posting these videos? And his response was, trying to lock in so I could get the discipline to finish my assignments, was his answer. And they're like, no, it's not that, it's something else. And so I know myself, I know my children. I said, let me make the atmosphere more comfortable for him so he can, speak out. And so we're all in there surrounding him. He's next to me, and the women are around the table with him. And I told them, I said, Luis, all these women care because there's a reason why we're all here. We need to know what's going on. And they explained to Luis the severity of the videos he had posted. And they said, those are not because you want to lock in for assignments. Those are videos of football and trying to hurt yourself and saying your mom's the only person there, because there's 5 videos. So basically there's some that are saying be disciplined to keep fighting. There's another one that said basically they're all words and very sad songs. And the second one was basically saying a mom is there to help you fight the fight no matter how old you get. And then the third one, the middle one, was the one that basically, that was the trigger warning of him trying to hurt himself. And then the last video was basically saying discipline, 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 because that's where he said. And finally, 3 hours, he finally broke down. And I was sharing a story earlier about my sister and my dad passing away. And I told him, I said, mijo, what got us out of that? Us, a family. I said, it was you guys. I did it for you. I didn't break down. I didn't lose my mind. Because of you guys, I fought for you. I said, and I'll still fight for you to this day. I said, and the thing is that you're 18. But you have to speak up now. I said, because you want to hurt yourself? Because somebody else? I said, but I lost my sister. I lost my dad. You saw how I got. I didn't break. I was like, I held strong and I fought. I said, and that's what I expect you to do now. My son pulled up his sweater over his face and fell to the floor off of his chair. And all of us women just wrapped around him and started praying over him. And we told them, let it out, speak. You need to speak about it, Luis. And he broke, and he said it. He said, yes, the discipline. I wasn't disciplined enough. I wasn't smart enough for them. I wasn't good enough for them. And I wanted it to end. He wanted it to end because this coach made him feel that way.
Student, I'm guessing.
And today, his brothers got up there,
Tell me your name and your grade.
spoke for him.
Jose.
His 11-year-old brother, because his other brother was too afraid to stand up.
My name is Jose.
But that 11-year-old.
Our future is at Jeopardy. I am a current student at Elder Middle School. I say it's because our coaches barely have a team this year due to no one coming from our high school to support any of our teams like they have in the past. Let's thank Jose for having a great week.
When one kid can't do it, you teach your other kids to speak up. And I told my son, I said, Mijo, that's all you have to say, release it. Just let it go. Release it. And pray to God, because that man upstairs knows and he doesn't like evil. And the suicidal lady that was there, I didn't even get her name because I was too wrapped up with my son. She said if your son wouldn't have spoken, we would have had to submit him. Because that video that he posted, it was like a whole, what he's going through right now, and he was going to hurt himself. She's like, I'm sorry to tell you, but he was going to hurt himself. And she was like, if I was you, I'd hire a lawyer at this point because the district isn't going to do nothing for him. He's just another Hispanic kid with disabilities. And it's sad to say, but A lot of people take their lives because of that reason. For coaches like this, for teachers that don't care, that sit there and tell your kids that they're going to amount to nothing, well, guess what? He didn't take my son because he's a child of God. And as we saw that my boy falling into pieces, all the women wrapped their hands around him and we prayed. We bled the blood of Jesus upon him to remove that evilness off of him, because that's exactly what had happened. That's what had taken place. All the evil that came from that man and them coaches had cast on my son. And people do not understand. I cannot stress enough about this. I cannot. And yes, they may be laughing, they may be smiling. One of his workers, one of his best friends, one of their brothers was working with him last night. And one thing he said, all the reason has been smiling, you would have never known. And I said, yes, look it. I sent you the video yesterday. What just happened? The Dallas Cowboy player, laughing, smiling. He just made the touchdown. And the next thing you know, he's taking his life. People need to be alert. Pay attention to your
at just
kids.
24 years young.
Just because you think that they're 18 and they're grown, it doesn't matter. They still need us. They need us to fight for them. They're our kids. That should conduct what I have to say.
But as you know, in our community, David,
Yeah.
some of our parents have immigration status.
So they're not even.
Some of
able
them
to-
are not going to speak out about what happens. They're just going to accept it. And
So-
I'm sure you've seen that even growing up in this community.
100%. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's why it's very important to have as many parents involved as you can, because it seems like not many parents are involved. So that's why these coaches think they could get away with, talking to the players however they want or calling them whatever names and thinking that nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. But we are trying to get two of the other players to write statements on their own. Because like I said, they've played together since the 8th grade, but it's been terrible.
Right.
It's been a nightmare.
So what would you tell the parents out there that are involved in sports or anything like that to help out in situations like this, or if they're going through anything like this?
Oh, I would absolutely encourage them to make sure that they advocate for their children, that they stand up. Even though we see them as almost grown in high school,
Right.
they sometimes still need their parents to advocate for them, and specifically in the area of special education. Because I think a lot of times when parents show up to ARDs or to 504s, they think the ARD or the 504 only applies to the classroom, when in reality, it really applies to them throughout all opportunities, including extracurricular opportunities, like sports or band or choir or those things. So it's really important to advocate and fight for your kids to make sure that they're getting the right accommodations and holding those people accountable. And the district actually tried to justify him not giving them to Isaiah, even when Isaiah and I asked, because it didn't have armband in the IEP. But as I expressed to you, the IEP had visual aid and graphic organizer in the classroom and in extracurricular activities. And that is exactly what an armband is.
Right.
And why would you, as an educator, not want to give children what they need for them and ultimately your team in this case to be successful? And just for the record, that had been our experience up until this moment. Isaiah had played basketball since 1st grade, football since 4th grade, baseball since 6th grade, and I've never had to intervene myself in between my son and a coach. Ever, never, until this moment. And like I said, he's a junior and he's already had 3 boys coordinators since his time in Northside. And none of the other 2 ever expressed any of these things, ever, singled out our sons. Like, we never had this experience. So out of all of this, even though it was very traumatic and it's very hard for us right now to know that we may have to put our sons back under this man's leadership if they continue to keep him there, right now it's important for me now, because I see parents have got to advocate for their kids both in the classroom and on the field or court.
Gotta Everybody needs to be accountable. Teachers, coaches,
Yes.
staff, even the cafeteria lady, the
Absolutely.
janitors, everybody.
Absolutely.